Good evening. Good evening. Woo! All right, I was told I should say go Mets, but I feel like we're in Detroit and we should say go Tigers. That wasn't good enough. Go Tigers! There we go. And I also was told I should say what up, though, to all my fellow Detroiters. He knew that. That was for our guy from LA here. I asked him earlier, how do you greet a Detroiter? And the proper response is what? All right. So it is truly an honor to welcome you all to the Highline Network Symposium, Rooted. As a proud Detroiter and a Knight Foundation director, I'm especially thrilled for Detroit to host so many of you here in the heart of our city. We are delighted to welcome infrastructure reuse leaders. If you're an infrastructure reuse leader, give yourself a round of applause. You guys are not happy enough for me. I think the bar is open for another hour. Is that what we need? Oh, okay, I'm sorry. That wasn't politically correct. We're delighted to welcome infrastructure reuse leaders from all over the country, including 5 of our Knight cities, all gathered with the shared goal of envisioning and advancing the potential of our urban and public spaces. Detroit is a city of resilience, creativity, and unwavering community spirit. It is a place where people continue to innovate, adapt, and reimagine what public space can mean for urban life. Here, our parks, trails, plazas are more than just places to gather. They are symbols of unity, celebration, and growth. These spaces remind us of our rich history while offering a glimpse into the bright future we are all building together. With the theme of this symposium being rooted, this resonates deeply here. It speaks to our collective commitment to equity, technology, and community connection in public spaces, especially as we continue to learn and evolve together. Over the next few days, I hope you'll experience Detroit's unique character, from our Riverfront to our Joe Louis Greenway to our local art and music, in the green spaces that reflect our commitment to inclusivity and sustainability. Through the work of the Highline Network and the support of Knight Foundation, we've seen incredible progress in reimagining public spaces, especially as we've adapted through challenges and promoted equitable access. Together, let's make the most of this time to share, to learn, and to build a stronger network that shapes the futures of our cities. Once again, welcome to the D, AKA Detroit. And thank you for being here. And let's dive into a remarkable few days of inspiration and collaboration. My name is Latrice McClendon with the Knight Foundation. If I can be of service, please reach out. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. You're so quiet. You're so good. Latrice told me not to, but I'm sorry, as a lifelong New Yorker, I have to say go Yankees. I'm sorry. But now, with my transplanted Detroiter hat, welcome to Detroit, and welcome to Michigan Central. You are in one of the most extraordinary places in the country, if not the world. So let me orient you a little bit as to where you are. By the way, I'm Josh Syverman, I'm the CEO of Michigan Central. So you're in a building that we reopened in June. The last passenger train was 1988 from here. By then, almost none of the building was actually used. Sat for almost 40 years. Yes, vacant, but also an incredible temple of culture and art and graffiti and performances and videos and raves and all the like. It's always interesting to see for us who admits they were in here during that time versus who doesn't. But what you're really at is not just a symbol of, but the embodiment of where Detroit is headed. And it's not just this building, it's also, you'll spend time tomorrow in the building across the street where we are growing what is probably the most unique and diverse ecosystem of incredible entrepreneurial innovation happening just about anywhere. This building, opened 1913, same design team as Grand Central. The Vanderbilts decided to build the two at the same time. At its peak, 4,000 people a day coming in. The restoration, which took almost 6 years, I know tomorrow we've arranged that you'll get tours. I urge you to take it. There's all kinds of incredible details, just little highlights in my minutes here. The folios around the windows behind you, those all had to be recreated through digital design. Those are all 3D printed composite material. The 29,000 Guastavino tile ceiling, every single one is retouched. 5,000 had to be fully replaced. I could go on for hours. When you walk in this room, you see little divots in the marble. That's from people's shoes over the years of sitting on the benches that are now gone, waiting for trains, waiting for people to arrive. Orlando Bailey and I were talking before, everybody has a story and a personal connection to this building. But what's happening here now is this incredible innovation ecosystem that's building, plus we're bringing this building back as a place where Detroiters and visitors from all over the world have an experience, that have a connection to this building. Over the course of any given day, we do multiple kinds of events, we do tours. We've seen all kinds of activities happening in here already. In the tower above the podium, our first tenants were starting in June, Detroit teenagers. We have a partnership with Google, their amazing program called Code Next, where there's cohorts of 150 Detroit high school students who are doing phenomenal work in really learning not just how to use technology, but then apply it to solve problems. This week, Ford Motor Company moved in to 2 of the 3 floors they will occupy. There is life in this building in every which way, and it's not just a beacon, it's actually a living symbol of like, what do we do next? And how do we keep pushing Detroit forward as a leader and an epicenter of talent and innovation. You all are amazing thinkers about public space and reuse of assets. The power and the secret to Michigan Central is that this all exists because of an investment from Ford Motor Company, but with the intention of creating, in our jargon, what we call an open platform, meaning that it's literally for everybody. It's for lots of companies, it's for all kinds of entities and actors, to create a community for everybody to be a part of. It's a model, I don't know if there's a comparable anywhere. I think it's one we're still learning, and we'll learn for quite some time how do we maximize the potential of it, but there is only possibility for what it can accomplish. So I urge you, take the tour tomorrow, not just here, but also see what's happening in New Lab at Michigan Central. The work is phenomenal. A couple of stats, you'll hear this. As of this week, we have 119 companies. That's from, we launched in April 23 there. 50% are coming from outside Michigan. It's literally around the country and around the world. 53% have a founder or CEO who's a woman and or a person of color. I could keep going with the different things to describe what's happening there, and it's really unlike, I think, anything happening anywhere. Over time, the space you're in now, we will continue to use it as flexible for events, productions, performances, conferences, meetings, all these things. Every day should be different kinds of vibrant things. You will see if you walk around in the South Concourse, there's an installation by the architect and artist Sushi Reddy. That's because with amazing support from Latrice and her colleagues, it's an example of, we think about innovation as not just technology in the traditional sense. Artists are innovators, and we want to make sure that we grow an art and technology program that's part of the dialogue around the future and what it means for all of us. And so that installation, amazing, take some time with it if you're allowed. It's interactive. It's a she also, you should know. But she's powered by an AI algorithm to respond to your language and process that. But it's an example of how Michigan Central is not just a celebration of the past, it's in fact about where we headed. So welcome, we're thrilled to have you here. Look forward to talking to you endlessly about Michigan Central, and enjoy, and I will turn it over to Asima. So thank you.
Thank you, Josh. Fun fact, Josh was one of my first bosses almost 25 years ago when I started working for the City of New York, so it's a real honor to share the stage with him here today. Welcome, everyone. My name is Asima Jansfeld. I'm the Chief Program and Engagement Officer and Managing Director of the Highline Network at the Highline in New York City. So excited to have you all here. And what a glorious space for us to kick off the Highline Network Symposium in this beautiful space. We are all a community of people reusing infrastructure to build better public spaces so we could be in no better place than Michigan Central in this grand hall. At the Highline, we celebrated our 15th birthday this year of our opening, and 25 years since Friends of the Highline was founded. And it's a remarkable achievement, and we're really proud of it. And we certainly have learned important lessons along the way, and we still do each and every day. And the Highline Network is our commitment to ensuring that we continue to learn and inspire others as we are learning and inspired by all of you. We want to make sure you all know that you have peers, you have a community around this whole world, particularly in North America, that you can be learning from, and it's our great joy to be able to bring you into community together in spaces like we are today here in Detroit. So I hope you'll take every opportunity over the next few days to ask questions, to build your peer networks, to identify new tools and practices that you can take home with you, and to learn from all of the wonderful speakers and panelists that you will be seeing today and over the next couple of days. But I also hope that you take full advantage of the opportunities that we have for you to experience Detroit. We are not here just to sit in a classroom. We want you to actually experience this wonderful and glorious city. It is a city that has so much to teach us. Our host partners are the wonderful Joe Louis Greenway Partnership, headed by Liana, who you'll be seeing later today, and the Detroit Riverfront Conservancy, which is also a fantastic partner and a Highline Network member. And they are amazing examples around our theme of being rooted in community. So we look forward to you hearing more about them today and over the next couple of days. I wanted to take a moment to read to you how the Joe Louis Greenway describes itself on its website. They are described as a space that celebrates the strength and resilience of its surrounding communities through inclusive programming, ongoing beautification, and intentional community engagement. This word resilience, we heard it today already from Latrice. It's a word we're probably going to hear a lot over the next few days, along with words like revitalization and renewal and renaissance. And when we're here, what do we mean when we use those words to describe a community, especially in a city like Detroit? When we use those words, we are inherently saying that a community has actually suffered some sort of trauma that it has to overcome, that there is something that they are coming back from. But is addressing and correcting those impacts and the causes of those impacts, is that really revitalization, renewal? Is it really a sign of resilience, or is it really about righting wrongs? And I think that's a conversation we want to have over the next couple of days. Detroit is a city with a remarkable history, but it's also a history of the people and the communities who have been left behind, often in shifting economies, as a result of public policy that has caused generational impacts, which is true in many of our cities. But we're here today because Detroit is now made up of leaders, many of who you will see on this stage today and over the next 2 days, who are changing the face of this city, including our partners, and because they understand the role that public spaces and parks can have in righting these wrongs. So it's going to be an amazing 3 days. I'm so glad that you all took some time out of your busy lives to be here with us. And I also want to acknowledge that this is a result, these 3 days, of our thoughtful and hardworking partners. And I need to make one shout out to my team. We have many Highline people who have worked on this, but in particular, Josue and Maddie, which I'm not sure where they are. If you have not met them, you will at some point in the next 2 days, and it is because of them that this has happened. So it's a huge thank you to my team. And last but not least, something like this requires money, no surprise, and we're very thankful to all of our partners who have helped make this event happen. So the Highline Network in particular is made possible by the funding support of the JPB Foundation, and this event has major support from both the John S. and James L. Knight Foundation and the Gilbert Family Foundation, both of whom are represented here today. And of course, we have program support from Guardian Life, as well as in-kind support from Michigan Central and New Lab, and we're so grateful to be able to have these spaces to hold our event, and additional support by Delta Airlines and TD Bank. So thank you. And with that, I am thrilled to invite our keynote guest to the stage. It is the Chief Operating Officer, Brad Dick, for the City of Detroit. He is he is an exemplary leader for Detroit in helping to forward the change, where we talk about the importance of public space in creating communities and how we all think differently about public-private partnerships and collaboration to invest in Detroit's future. But first, a quick video to show this work in action.
What a gift this is for our family. We are so excited that the city is going to have such a beautiful reminder of our father throughout the city that he loved.
My dad grew up in a time where there was division, kind of similar to how it is today. But he was able to overcome that. He was able to be a hero to not only blacks, but whites. We pray and we hope that they're inspired not only by my dad, but all the other great Detroiters who have grown up here.
We are a walking representation of our own legacy. And I think the Greenway will allow all of us to walk in unison towards something better.
He quietly fought against racism and inequities throughout his entire life. And he was a champion outside the ring. And we have such a treasure in my dad. And we've sacrificed and shared him so much that we don't want his legacy to go away.
The Joe Louis Greenway is everything to our community.
Before the Greenway, there were abandoned cars. It was a dump site. And to look at it now, it's amazing. This is what I remember growing up. We take care of our neighborhoods.
When we found out that the Joe Louis Greenway was coming through the neighborhood, we were very excited for the neighborhood to thrive, for there to be new businesses to come over.
People who live here now see the value in fixing up a property, and they moving in again.
I purchased this house from the Detroit Land Bank, and for me to live on the Greenway, it represents hope for me. My neighbors and friends, they came out to help me clean out the yard, and it was such a blessing. Woohoo! It humbled me to feel the love of the community. I can't even put it into words how much it means to me. I plan on fully restoring the house. I just want to make this my home.
Working through this to really see what goes into doing something of this magnitude, the city sent 7 individuals to Atlanta so that we could see what this could bring to the city of Detroit. So when we came back, that's when we decided that we needed to also inform our community and let them see the potential of this.
We got together when we made the Greenway Heritage Conservancy. We made sure that the neighbors knew. We threw community events.
It just takes one person to affect the beginning of a change.
I love bike riding. Getting on the Greenway just blocks from my home. It's a feeling of freedom. It represents some place that you can be proud of.
The heart of the Joe Louis Greenway is really the people. Also, it's the heart of the people who work at City Hall to make this happen.
Bruce Shan, where are you? I saw you earlier. So that was the star of the video. There are a few people in this world that I could say I truly love, and I love that lady. She is remarkable and amazing, and I'm going to tell a little story about Ruth Ann. So not only in her neighborhood, she had a bunch of the senior ladies together because they have a lot of new immigrants from the United States, from different countries moving in. Most of them are Spanish speakers. And Ruth Ann and some of her neighbors got together, and they're trying to learn Spanish to speak to their new neighbors. Isn't that awesome? So, she's great. So thank you, Asima and the Highline folks, for coming to Detroit. We love having you here. We love showing off our city and where we've come since bankruptcy. It's hard to believe it's been only 11 years now since we filed bankruptcy, the largest in the United States at the time. And we've come a long way, and we couldn't have done it without folks like the Highline coming here, our philanthropic and our business partners. So a shout out to all of them. And then a big shout out to the residents in the room. I saw some of our parks people here. I saw Anthony Benavides here somewhere. Anthony's another hero in the city of Detroit. There's probably others I'm just missing. So thank you, all of you guys, for being here. So I actually did something I don't normally do. I wrote my speech down because I typically go off and say crazy things. So I'm going to be good today. And so I hope everyone enjoyed this lovely video. I think this video really showcases the remarkable residents we have in the city of Detroit. And there's 600 and some thousand more people like Rushan and Anthony out there. I'm also a proud resident of Detroit. I've lived in the city for 32 years now, and I may or may not have gone to a rave party in 1992 here. Don't tell Josh. Back when I was young. So we're talking about the Joe Louis Greenway a bit now, which was I think one of the ultimate public spaces and connected spaces. The Joe Louis Greenway, when completed, will connect 4 different cities. That's 4 cities: Detroit, Dearborn to our west, and inside the city of Detroit we have 2 cities, Highland Park and Hamtramck. All of that will be connected eventually to the Riverfront Conservancy, which either you haven't seen yet, is along our Detroit Riverfront facing Canada. And then eventually we're going to connect to the Gordie Howe Bridge, which is a new bridge being built that will connect to Canada. So at some point, you'll be able to walk or ride your bike across the bridge. I think they'll figure the passports out, but that should be pretty interesting when it's all done. In the first 8 miles so far of the Joe Louis Greenway, we have removed, of the construction site, we've removed 30,000 dumped tires, 27,000 Olympic-sized pools of debris. Imagine having to look at that blight in your backyard. Now this has been replaced with the Greenway, which you've seen, and already in the first year, on the first 2 miles to be completed, we measured the number of people that bike or walk on there, 44,000 people in just the first year. That's incredible. But Detroit, we've had this narrative for many years of downtown versus Detroit. I think with what we're doing at the Joe Louis Greenway, it's helping lessen that narrative. People can now say, well, what are you doing in the neighborhoods? We're building this connected Greenway, which connect you to the Riverfront and other cities. It's a small step forward, but we have a ways to go, but it's also helping lessen that narrative and making the neighbors and the citizens of Detroit feel like they're having something. We're also sending a message that we know everyone deserves nice things. And I think it's, we talk about big fancy words and stuff like that, but what it boils down to is we just want to give people nice things. Everybody deserves to have access to parks and public spaces with amenities for all ages. Many Detroiters can't afford to leave for vacations, what we call here in Michigan up north, or to Disneyland or places like that. Many folks in the city of Detroit go to their local park, they have cookouts, family reunions, or go to Belle Isle on a hot summer day and just drive around. Since our parks are used in this manner, it's important to ensure that we have nice and accessible amenities. It doesn't mean that everything we have to build has to be a magnificent structure or anything like that, like the playscape we built there. Most Detroit residents would like walking paths, horseshoe pits, basketball courts, and swings. In fact, one of our most popular requests has been a bench swing. If you go out to Roosevelt Park, this is a city park out here, we put in that park bench swings, like the porch swings you used to have at Grandma and Grandpa's house. You can go out there with your family or your lover and have a nice little time out there and just swing in the swing. And we've only gotten one complaint about that park since we opened it, one complaint. Add more bench swings. So we put more bench swings in. Isn't that remarkable? So how did we get to where we're at today, 11 years later? First, this is the most important thing. We hired good people to create a vision and plan for our city. We shared that plan with Mayor Duggan, including the cost for it. And that plan was a master plan, a 10-year master plan that touched nearly all of the parks in the city. We either went through and did a complete renovation, or we replaced these old raggedy fences you used to see with grass and weeds growing in them. We put boulders around our parks now. People are like, boulders? Well, it looks like the Ice Age just left, but people like playing the boulders, kids play on them, and they're also easier to maintain. We've also done something as silly as I told the mayor, I said, let's plant daffodils. And the mayor was like, daffodils? And I said, yeah. So this fall, we will finish planting 4 million daffodils across the city. I like the fact that Detroit might be known as Daffodil City versus as something else, right? So you drive around here in spring, and it's yellow everywhere. It looks really great. I did a radio interview, and they asked me about it, and they were calling me Daffodil Dick, which I really didn't appreciate that. So I suppose it's better than Daffy Dick, but anyway. So, sorry, Miriam. Secondly, we began to renovate some of the parks completely and build new parks in high-density areas. Our goal was to have a 10-minute walk for all of our parks. We also, I hate to say the term, but we also shuttered some parks and closed some parks. We had some parks that were low-density areas where the population had moved out. We had one park that a railroad track ran through the middle of it. So we kind of closed those parks, we surplused them, and that allowed us to do something different. We built 23 new parks in higher density areas of the city that we can maintain and take care of. I'm now proud to say we have over 5,000 acres of parkland in the city and 300 parks right now, which is an amazing feat for us. So since 2015, we've improved over 217 parks in 10 years. That was an investment of $130 million. A lot of it was the city, but it was also a lot of it was partnerships with the philanthropic community and also the private entities. We are also, this does not include, $130 million does not include the money we're spending right now. Thank you, Uncle Joe Biden. We are spending our ARPA money and putting a lot of it into parks, and including the Joe Louis Greenway. We have another massive investment going on there, including building 4 new rec centers in the city. The city of Detroit has made an equitable park investment strategy a central component of its revitalization. Since 2014, this has spurred increased housing. Housing prices have gone up around park areas. We've created jobs and business development in the city. All this has contributed to the overall economic and, most importantly, the mental health of our Detroit residents. So with that said, that's all I have to say today. And I can't thank you enough for coming and say nice things about Detroit. Come back again and visit. We have great restaurants, great food, and we got great parks. And great people, too. I had one other job, and I almost messed it up. One of my dearest of friends, J.J. Velez, who is the Director of Public Spaces for Gilbert Foundation, is going to speak next.
All right. I'm going to try to be as quick as possible because you really want to hear this panel and really want to hear what they have to say. So good evening and welcome to Detroit, Paris of the Midwest. How many of you guys knew that? Absolutely, right? Latrice said, what up, doe? I gotta change it up a little bit. My name is JJ Velez, Director of Public Space for the Gilbert Family Foundation. And like Brad, I'm gonna stay on course and I'm gonna read my speech because I wrote it. It's a pleasure to have you all here for the next several days to talk, learn, and collaborate about something we all care deeply about, our public spaces and how they have transformed our communities. Public spaces are the heart of any city, and Detroit is no different. These spaces are where we come together, celebrate, share ideas, and where communities truly thrive. Investing in these spaces is not just about beautifying neighborhoods, it's about creating access. Access to culture, to nature, and to one another. These spaces foster a sense of belonging and pride, offering residents and visitors places to feel connected and engaged. I've had the privilege of witnessing firsthand how well-designed public spaces can uplift entire communities. From my former role as Deputy Director of the City of Detroit's Park and Recreation Division and to my current role at the Foundation, I have seen how these spaces contribute to the local economy, improve mental health, and create opportunities for social interactions. From green spaces that encourage outdoor activities to plazas that host markets, cultural events, every investment brings a a return in strong, more vibrant neighborhoods. The Gilbert Family Foundation partnerships with the city and nonprofits have shown the real value of these investments. Through initiatives like the Curtis Jones Project in Northwest Goldberg neighborhood, which hopefully you guys will take the tour tomorrow and Friday, we've seen tangible community impact, increased access, improved quality of life, and the revitalization of underused spaces. We've also seen success downtown with our annual winter markets in Cadillac Square, which not only beautify the area during the holiday season, but also created opportunities for local businesses and residents to engage in spaces in meaningful ways. Together, through continued collaboration, we can create more of these public spaces that not only shape our physical landscape, but also enrich the social fabric of communities here in Detroit and across the nation. I'm excited about what the future holds as we continue to invest in spaces that make our city more livable, equitable, and inclusive for everyone. Now it's my pleasure to warmly welcome the esteemed panelists to the stage. First, Orlando Bailey from Outlier Media will be our moderator. Next, we have Matt Cullen, Board Chair of the Joe Louis Greenway Partnership and the Detroit Riverfront Conservancy. Brad Dick, COO, City of Detroit. Ms. Liana Medley, Executive Director of the Joe Louis Greenway Partnership. And last but not least, Ms. Miriam Nolan, retired founder president of the Community Foundation for Southeast Michigan. And I leave you guys with this. I hope that you guys enjoy our beautiful city, learn as much as you can from one another during this symposium. And last but not least, go Tigers.
I hate to be that person. Is this portable? Okay. We want to see Miriam. Thank you so much. Good evening, everybody. Oh, y'all can do better than that. Good evening. What if I told you that we are between you and last call? Would you greet us a little? Okay. So really, really excited to be here tonight to have what I hope to be a really amazing discussion and make sure that you all make it back in time before last call happens. You know, I want to go ahead and just jump in because we only have a little bit of time. Asima was talking about some of the language surrounding a lot of the work that we have the privilege and opportunity to do, and it's been called revitalization, it's been called a rebirth, it's been called renewal. And I think all of us sort of hold this tension of language and what we call the work that we do, especially when we are working in communities that, as Asima put it, have been traumatized, but some communities are still experiencing active trauma. And so, in your various roles, and all of you have played some and play amazing roles, how are you carrying that tension, right? And how are we making sure that the language is also accessible to everybody, that nobody would be, especially residents, would be offended by this language, but would feel included in this language. Liana, we talked a little bit about this on the prep call. I'll start with you because you got a big applause when your name was called.
As I should.
Okay.
You know, that is, I think.
That's the east side for you right there. She from the east side.
That's east side.
All day.
We're neighbors, so.
That's right.
I think, again, language in any type of community work is so very critical to how we navigate in the space. And I can just tell you one of the things that I find valuable is letting residents and community members in the different locations kind of define that for me. Yeah. And that is always shifting. And I think the place where the tension resides in me is knowing that that shift is constantly going to happen. So the use of the word revitalization, the use of the language urban renewal, the use of the term resilience. Asim and I were talking about it this morning. I mean, for many people in many different groups, it's gonna have a different meaning. And I think you have to kind of pivot your own center, right? Like, what is your lived experience? And when you go into communities and you're doing this work and you're talking about these large public projects, you have to be willing to let residents reset and recalibrate that language for you. And that's going to happen over and over again. And so you are constantly becoming like this multilingual community member, right? So that as you go into this neighborhood, I mean, the Joe Louis Greenway, if you've been to our website or you heard Brad, I mean, it's going through 4 cities. That 4 cities is 24 different neighborhoods. The amount of languages and lived experiences that we're going through, so everybody's connection to the word resilience, revitalization is gonna be different. And so I just choose not to define that for folks.
Yeah. Brad, I want to come to you because as a city official and as a shepherd of the work, you also are a shepherd of language. What kind of intention do you guys employ when thinking about how to call and name this work?
You know, can everybody hear me? It's, for me, you know, a little bit about my background. I was born and raised on a dairy farm in the middle of nowhere, Indiana. Get up every morning at 4:30 in the morning and milked cows, right? So diversity to me was Catholic or Protestant. That was diversity where I grew up. And when I went to college, it opened my eyes. And after I finished college, I went to Peace Corps and spent 2 years in Tanzania. And then I came to Detroit. And everything I've ever done in my life, one of the things I found out you have to do, especially at the city too, you just have to listen to people and learn what their speak is and what their story is. And this may not totally answer your question, but probably about 10 years ago, we renovated a park here in Detroit, which was the site of the 67, and I'm going to say the word that the residents used, riot or rebellion. And it was funny in the meeting, a lot of the older residents kept calling it a riot, and everybody was African American, kept calling it a riot, and the younger residents kept calling it a rebellion. And they got into this big discussion about that terminology. And I just listened, and I learned a lot. And I think that's what in my role I have to do, is listen and learn a lot and hear people's stories and what their terminology is and what they want to call it, and not try to put a label on it, and listen to what they have to say. I think that's how I've always gone through with things to do my job. And then I think when you have to capture those stories, then we have to sit down and sort out how we tell that story. And I feel like we've done that really well at the Joe Louis Greenway. And I've learned a lot from the residents. I'm not the smartest guy in the room by any means, but I might be the most curious guy in the room. And I feel that's my role, is to sit and listen and help interpret.
And remain curious.
And remain curious.
Miriam Nolan, enjoying retirement? I'm coming to you because, you know, one of the questions that we have is, how are public spaces building blocks of our city? And I think a lot of the work that you all do is to sort of figure out where the gaps are and fill those gaps. And one of those gaps for so long in the city of Detroit was connection, right? And so how do you see public spaces building and filling those connection gaps? And Matt, I'm gonna ask you the same question.
Well, thanks again for all of you coming here. I remember moving here in 1985, actually, thinking I'd be here for 2 years. You will come to love Detroit, and you will be back. This is a great place. The only other thing I'll say is Matt and I serve on the board of the Joe Louis Greenway Partnership, and we take credit for hiring you.
That's right. Good job.
That's true. That's true. So the Community Foundation gave me the opportunity to think every day about how to make this a better place for everyone to live and work. And I first got introduced to greenways 34 years ago. I didn't know what a greenway was. And it was because one of my trustees said, they're building these green spaces all over the state of Michigan using federal dollars and state dollars, and none of it's coming into Detroit and Southeast Michigan. Well, I did my best work when I got mad. Well, I got mad. So what we did was to turn to communities, and in our case, 7 counties, a whole corner of Southeast Michigan. And you have to look back at history. You gotta have a vision, but you gotta look back at history. And one of the things that's true is that geographic boundaries here were tight, whether it's 8 Mile in the city of Detroit. And so what we thought about in using what we'd learned about greenways was, how did you break down boundaries and build community? And so all of the strategy we used was to think about breaking down those boundaries. And the Joe Louis Greenway, for example, goes through 3 communities. We helped communities around the 7 counties design, plan, finance, and build greenways, but only if they crossed at least 2 geographic boundaries. And the residents from these 2 communities had to be supportive. Has it made a difference? 80 communities are now linked. The boundaries are still there. We know that. But if you ride your bike across 8 Mile, you don't know that. So for me, it's really about having a strategy that you can look back on and say, did it resonate? Was it of the community? We knew that if you build it, they would come. If we have time, I'll tell you my concerns about the future for greenways. But for me, it's about hearing, remembering, and having a clear vision. That probably wasn't what you wanted me to say.
No, you can say what you want to say. You're Miriam Nolan. Matt Cullen, I want to ask you the same question around public spaces being, the impetus and bedrock of feeling connection gaps in the city. And you shepherd and steward one of our best, one of the best here in the nation, actually.
Absolutely. It's interesting. I grew up in the city of Detroit, and I go back quite a while in the city, and I grew up in a wonderful neighborhood, North Rosedale Park. It was spectacular. Friends everywhere, parks everywhere. We drive ride our bikes to the corner and Little League and all that kind of stuff. I went away to college and I came back, and it was turning into a different city, and a lot of people were leaving. A lot of the parks were closing. There had never really been parks of the same type downtown, so it was a bit different. And so I was at General Motors at the time, got involved with General Motors buying the Renaissance Center coming downtown Detroit. And it was interesting because at the time, most people were leaving Detroit, and General Motors made a real courageous decision to say, we want to be part of what's going on. Renaissance Center is on the Riverfront. You couldn't walk. You literally could not walk. There's 3 levels of road between the Renaissance Center and the Riverfront. I didn't get into revitalization or anything else because there was nothing there. It was just like empty, bombed out buildings, and there was, so it was just a question of like, hey, we're going to make a commitment, we're going to make a difference, and so on. We thought we could. We thought we would embark on the Riverfront and as a part of that, and that became sort of the catalyst for the Detroit Riverfront Conservancy. I think what's really interesting now in retrospect, looking back 20 years later, you look at spaces like Detroit Riverfront, which totally transformed the physical image of the city of Detroit. Campus Marsh's Park, Eric Larson's here, did much the same in the downtown. But at the same time, Brad and Megan Elliott and others were working on the parks in the heart of the city. And I think what changed it most fundamentally for me is that people came together differently. When I came back, when in early 2000s, there was no place that people from the suburbs, the city, the blacks, the whites, whatever, there was no place physically that they came together. There was no place that they would walk a dog in downtown Detroit, or let alone a baby carriage or anything like that. And it was really, I think, in many ways, when the Riverfront created an environment. And going back to the previous conversation just real briefly, I was naive at the time. I thought, hey, we make a beautiful riverfront, everybody's going to love this. But I quickly got chastised, and it was like, hey, look, we got to make sure everybody's a part of this. So we had 150 community meetings. So we because initially there was a thought that, hey, this is going to be a corporate riverfront or something like that, and we said, no, that's going to be the opposite of that, right? And so anyway, I guess that the biggest thing that I've seen is public space has changed the way people interact in the city of Detroit as people, and is profoundly impactful.
I would say that the development of these kinds of spaces in areas that hadn't seen development, the story that you tell about coming back to a changing city, right? There were so many folks who were here when the city was changing, where folks were fleeing, and there's a story to tell about that. I don't think we can have a true and real conversation about Detroit and our public spaces and divorce that conversation from race, right? Detroit becoming a majority black city, and a lot of the language that was used was supplanted with policy that was harmful, and now policy is trying to rectify and fix the harm that was once done. And when we talk about economic development, we don't really always talk about the inclusion of people in economic development. I think community economic development is a relatively new term, but you all are wrestling with this tension of trying to anchor and center people in the development of the Riverfront and the development of JLG. Tell us, Liana, how you doing that? How are you doing that?
That is the needle that we are like constantly trying to thread. And, you know, the eye of that needle is so precise that we have to continuously readjust. So, you know, I can tell you one of the things that's been very critical for the Joe Louis Greenway is learning from projects around the country and around the world and learning from those projects, right? And so oftentimes we look at other projects and we want to look at the good thing that's happened, like how do we take that and how do we incorporate that? But I think with the Joe Louis Greenway and the work that the city of Detroit has done is how do we learn from what we shouldn't do, right? What are some things that if we go down to the Beltline and we talk to the folks around that project, and if they said they had a crystal ball that they can look into the future and do things differently, what would those things be? And so with the Joe Louis Greenway, being really thoughtful about planning around the economic development, about looking at, you know, vacant parcels and land around the Greenway, thinking about affordable housing strategy, thinking about land aggregation, how can we look at that in a larger scale? Because I think, you know, just as a matter of philosophy, what I feel that many of us are doing is we are trying to correct issues that someone with, we hope with good intentions, created for us 50 years ago. And then we're trying not to be the people who are creating the issues that someone has to correct 50 years from now. So we are always in this space of trying to look at the past, think about the present, and plan for the future. And so with the Greenway, we're always in that kind of just the position of how do we address for the population that we have here. And this is a conversation that I always am grounding myself with, that it is I heard this from a good friend of ours, Nate Smith, who runs the Partnership for Southern Equity, that if we are developing space for the people who are not here, we are displacing and we are gentrifying. And so I am, without any of the other work around it, I am thinking about this project and how it is focused on the people who are here. How do we make sure that the people who are living in the neighborhoods right now around the Greenway, because this is a neighborhood-based project. You saw it on the slides. That Greenway is in somebody's backyard. And we are responsible to those people first, right? And as we build this project and we are responsible to those people, we know that it will create an environment where others will be welcomed in, but that welcoming happens from those who are there. And so we're always in that tension of economic development. Around the Greenway, there's lots of vacancy. If you have not signed up for the tour, please do so. Am I advertising? So I will be leading a tour the next couple of days on the Joe Louis Greenway. And if you want to see a project that is a neighborhood-based project that has layers of public, private, and philanthropic investment, and that is a project that's focused on building a future for people who are here, you should do my tour. But it will also show you that we are building on what we want to see and what neighborhoods and communities want to see for their neighborhood.
Okay, we only have a few minutes left. Miriam, I want to come to you. And can you just sort of, and Brad, I really would want to ask the two of you to sort of help demystify this term that we hear all the time around public-private partnerships, right? Number one, what does it mean? And how does a city, right? How does the city fund these kinds of greenways and developments? Miriam, you sat atop of a major foundation here in Southeast Michigan who believed in the creation and the development of greenways. Sort of demystify this language for us. Like, where did money come from? How is it funded? Yeah.
Well, so two things I want to say. We have a lot to learn. You just heard about the Joe Louis Greenway. It's a public-private partnership. The land, the Greenway itself, is owned by the city. The Riverfront Conservancy, you're going to learn more about, is different. The land is owned by the nonprofit. What does a public-private partnership mean when you have those two very different arrangements in perpetuity? I always think in perpetuity, like way out there forever. What's a public-private partnership? There's no one. It's a whole lot of different things. In the case of Detroit, hey, look, you know this is an auto city. It's very competitive. And you love to make a deal, and you want to get some recognition, but now how do you work together? We learned how to do that during the bankruptcy. We all had to come together. We had to save our city. And I think we now act differently. Money matters, but it's more about the people who are part of those partnerships, whether they're real or not. We've been fortunate to have a mayor, to have Brad and others that understand public-private. We'll see what happens next go around. The bottom line is, if you have neighbors, if you have whoever's lining the riverfront as it continues to develop, that believes they have to work together for the common good to keep these green spaces of the highest quality possible and fund them. I don't have an answer.
Yeah. Brad?
Well, as far as the future, I'm going to borrow a line from Kamala Harris. We can't go back. And that's really important because we can't go back. And now that we've built it and they're coming, it's up to all the residents to hold future leaders in this city, including me and Liana, that hold people accountable. There's lots of Rushans, there's lots of Anthonys out there, Eric Larson somewhere here floating around too. It's all of our jobs to hold the future mayor and the future council members accountable to fund and maintain and put effort and money into public spaces and continue those relationships. I think we've built it now, and I think we're going to continue building on that. I don't feel like we could step back without a large outcry happening. Because I know Rushan, the future mayor or city council, said they didn't want to fund something at the Joe Louis Greenway parks. I know you and Alicia, Lamonda would all be down there banging on doors, wouldn't you?
I'm glad you brought up accountability because it leads to my last question, and I don't think I would be the journalist that I am if I couldn't ask Matt this question about the Riverfront Conservancy and the national headlines concerning, some of the scandal at the Riverfront Conservancy. Can we get a status check? How's it going? What's going on?
Yeah, sure. It's interesting. We're talking about the Joe Louis Greenway and what we've been doing there. In many ways, the precursor to that was the Riverfront Conservancy. We embarked on it 20-some years ago, and Miriam and Brad and I and many others have served on a board there, represented very much the public-private partnership. And And we created, ultimately 5.5 miles. It's nearly done now. Spectacular riverfront, 3.5 million visitors a year. $2 billion worth of economic development, run by a small team. And we had a bad guy in the midst, a guy who, circumvented, he was trusted, he circumvented the internal controls. There's lots of conversation we can have about how that took place. But we found it, we discovered it, and we said, look, we're going to have to take this on now. And so we said, what are we going to do? We're going to 4 Ps. We're going to prosecute the guy, and we're going to recover all or as much of the money as we can. We're going to preserve the riverfront. We're going to put protection in place so it never happens again. And we're going to prosper. We're going to make sure that this development continues to take place. If it weren't for the fact that the riverfront was such a powerful vision and had accomplished all that it had accomplished, it would be gone now. It would have stopped. But as a credit to our community, as a credit to, we have several members of a wonderful Riverfront Conservancy team that are here today, Ryan Sullivan and Cassie and Stephen and Rachel and others. You're going to have an opportunity to see it. You're going to see a spectacular riverfront. If it weren't for the fact that we had that kind of team and we have a community that valued the riverfront the way that it does and public space the way that it does, it would have failed when General Motors went bankrupt. It would have failed when the city of Detroit went bankrupt. It would have failed when our original political sponsor, Kwame Kilpatrick, had all of his issues. One of the powers of a public-private partnership is it is built on a solid foundation that allows it to withstand a lot of attacks from different sides. This one was from an internal bad guy, but we're going to persevere through it, and we're the #1 riverfront in the United States 3 years in a row. Mark Pasco, who's our communications guy, told us he was going to take this year off because he wanted somebody else to win. But we're going to come back at it next year, and we're going to do it again, and we are going to prosper. And I guess stealing Brad's theft of Kamala Harris's quote, we're not going to look backward, we're going to look forward, and we're going to fix it and move on.
A lot of Kamala Harris quotes today. I am told that I am completely out of time. Please join me in thanking Brad Dick, Liana Medley, Miriam Nolan, Matt Cullen. Thank you all so much.